because when
I
we
think
were
the half
talking-
hour is like the
All right.
designated questions. that
Good
you ask.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Rosa, and I am the Dawn ICAM business owner. And thank you so much for joining today's session, our panel, Shaping the Future of Dawn's Identity and Access Management. So in past conferences in both Dawn IT East and Dawn IT West, we have mostly focused on talking about what NIST is, what it does. So we figured that we've done that. We want to talk more about recent developments, where we are now, where are we going, and all the efforts that the Dawn CIO is going through, and Dawn CIO in conjunction with PO Digital, in order to continue modernizing our identity and access management. So yesterday, you heard Ms. Rathbun and Ms. Beavers talking a lot about giving access to our users at the right time and when they need it. So one of the key enablers of this is identity and access management. So today, I have with me a stellar panel that is going to be answering some questions, and we definitely want to leave enough time for Q&A. I think the real value here is to hear from you. So we will have a couple of questions, and then we'll have time for you to ask your questions. So I'll start here with my colleague, Terry Lee Holland. She is the IDAM Art Program Manager. Next to her is Kurt Parker. He is our NIST lead engineer. We have Dave Volker, our Zero Trust Dawn CIO lead. We have Christina Genoese Serbi. She is the Neptune product owner. And then we have Frank Briguglio. He's our SailPoint engineer. So together, we hope to answer a lot of the questions that you have, and again, provide a good overview of where we are today. Like I said, ISV 2.0 has been very focused in the three pillars of optimizing. We are focused on the optimized pillar with identity and access. So today's conversation is going to be very focused on the left side of this diagram, Naval Identity Services. And you're going to see throughout the conversations that we're going to have that there is a lot more to Dawn ICAM, Identity and Access Management. As we've grown and as other services and offerings are out there, we're looking to integrate all those in our enterprise service offerings. Now, like I said, we want to talk about updates, where we are, and where we're going. So with that, we're going to start asking our Terry Lee to give a really quick update on the most recent advancements on Naval Identity Services, as well as where we are headed in the timeframe of 25 through 29.
Okay. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Can we go to the next slide, if you don't mind? Perfect. Okay, so just a couple of the bigger ticket items that we've been working on and updates. So last May, I believe, NIST received the official enterprise service designation. We worked on that for a while. And it is not the full NIST offering, as everybody knows all the different capabilities that we're both working on and providing, but it is for the current services that we offer in IL5 for CAC access today for the Navy. We are actively working on Marine Corps, and you'll see the Hyperion piece there. We are connected to the Marine Corps' Hyperion instance or tenancy, and continuing to work with them to lay out what the future for identity is on the Marine Corps side under Dawn ICAM. I just want to make sure I hit on all these things. Okay. This past December, we were invited by the Marine Corps to engage in an exercise, and I'm going to let Kurt give the details on it, but it was very successful. We've got a lot of great feedback on it, but it just proved the interoperability that we have between NIST and the identity services that we're providing. The engineers, the fantastic engineers that we sent out there, as well as the Marine Corps and what they brought to the table. Do you want to add some more on that?
Yeah, so the exercise was seeing if the NIS stack could be deployed in a DDoS situation on an autonomous vehicle, essentially. This was done by the Naval Postgraduate School, and the students there were Marine Corps students. We were able to not only help deploy the NIS stack and do a directory sync from the enterprise in order to show that this is a capability that can be used, but we also helped them with a few other ICAM specific issues dealing with some third-party software that we had to make it work the way that they intended it to. It went very well. Dr. Jasper, who gave a talk earlier today, assisted us and asked for our help in that.
All right, so that's so the detail efforts continue, so that's just our most recent. The December prior, we did release a white paper where we did a successful pilot on the NIPR side. So we're continuing to work down those efforts. And I'm gonna go around the bottom. This past May, not only did we get our enterprise service designation signed off, but we also released the NIST onboarding portal. It allowed systems to register to be onboarded or integrated with NIST. And it also allowed them to integrate with Ping, one of the products that we use to provide our IDP services. Not fully automated, but we're getting there. We've got the portal 2.0 on our roadmap, and we're going to continue to work towards providing a true self-service portal, automated on the back end, a lot of connections with other applications so that we do not have to always be putting in the same data into another form. So we're working on a lot of those things to make it easier for the app owners to consume our services. And even if the app owners have more legacy applications, or if they have a new team supporting that application, we want to make it user-friendly for everybody. We do have some dates that we need to meet in order to be compliant with DoD CIO's push for identity services to be provided for Zero Trust, which I know we're going to talk about some more. So we have a lot of mandates that we need to meet, and this is going to be a way for us to meet them. Our IL6 deployment. So we started working that around that same time frame. So May was a big month for us last year. But the team, as they usually do, stood up to that challenge. So we started working like the pre-planning phase. This fiscal year, we've been working on the actual deployment. As most know, NIST is hosted by NavAir's CSM. And so we are working with them for the IL6 deployment. And we plan to have that live in June, July of this year. So that'll be really great, and we're staying on schedule, which is pretty good too. And then the last thing is our Flink Speed pilot. So we have been working with Flink Speed for quite some time, not only just to be connected to them, but where can NIST be a game changer, if you will, for some of the things or gaps that they might have in services. And so we've been collaborating with them a lot. And again, I'll turn it over to Kurt to kind of detail the pilots that we worked.
Yeah, so for Flink Speed, there are a couple different ways that we have done integrations with them. The first one is with what's called the Graph API. What that essentially allows us to do is using the user access workflow that we have that is accepted by N2, N6, a program that is hosted inside the Flink Speed or the Azure environment, IL6, that uses Azure security groups for their authorization. NIS can manipulate membership into those security groups so that you can have what is referred to as an automated SAR, even though we're not talking about a form anymore. They can use the user access workflow that we have that provides supervisor approval, security manager approval, and the optional information owner approval, and then automatically provision the access immediately once all the approvals are done, which in turn also allows us to secure access whenever the rules for having access are no longer met. In addition to that, we've also been working with the FAST tool and John St. John's group and a few commands to attempt to speed up and simplify the birthright access into Flink Speed. So we're trying to replace that wet signature and all of the individual manual steps that are required before you get, let's say, your first Flink Speed account and the access to other things that you need to do your work, so that we can have people start work and be able to do work as quickly as possible without wasting a whole lot of the Navy's time and money shuffling papers around, which is the old process. That's still in a pilot phase. So hopefully we'll be able to share more on that in the future.
Those are most of the big ticket updates. What I'll add in the center, though, is, so not only are we working these initiatives to deploy additional capabilities, but we are continuing to integrate applications. And so 15, I believe, onboarded today, if we haven't onboarded another one since we put the slides together. And then, let's see, 20 we have scheduled to be completed by the end of this fiscal year. So, not huge numbers, we get it, but that's the self-service portal that we plan on deploying hopefully here soon. But we, again, have a lot to get after. The team has done great work. Our priority has been to do, or to integrate audit relevant applications. We want to get the audit passed, the first go round we have here. So that's like our major push. And for those non-audit relevant apps, they are chomping at the bit, submitting the system registration. We're bringing them in as we can. A lot of lessons learned as we go. That's also going to be tied into the self-service portal. But great work across the board. I just want to give a quick shout out if I can. Yeah. So the NIST team did receive a Don IT Excellence Award. So I just want to, but thank you. Yeah. There's a lot of you in here, both vendor and then service contract support. So just wanted to make sure that that update was provided as well.
And then what's on the horizon?
Yeah, so May's gonna be another great month. But so I've talked about the portal. So automated onboarding, that's what we have to get after. That's gonna be a big thing for us. We on the schedule have FY26 as our target for DDIL deployments with Canes. It is not written in pen, it's written in pencil. We're continuing to work towards that, meeting quarterly with different stakeholders for that to be provided. But, you know, we have to schedule it with a lot of different things going on. So we're continuing to work down that path. And then as we talked about with the different efforts, the original pilot on the NIPR side, and then what we did with MCTISA, continuing to like put the puzzle pieces together so we have that final deployment ready to go and tested. And then one of the other things that we've added later on is we always want to be reviewing the products that we're utilizing. So on our roadmap, we have added that we are going to be doing a product review in FY28. That is after we are all supposed to be compliant with Zero Trust architecture, as well as pass the audit, as well as have all of our identity services out there. So we figured that was the best time. So just that's what we're looking forward to. Anything you want to add? Those are our big ticket items. If I could go back one to when you were talking about update, I forgot. So PEO Digital has rolled out their solution train. The IDAM art was one of the arts that launched with the solution train. So that is how we are working today. So a lot of folks are working with the NIST team for integration, but just, you know, we are opening this up to all things identity, and we're going down that path. So when we talk about the work we're doing with LaneSpeed, work that we're doing with Hyperion, we are really trying to bring all of the Don's identity underneath the umbrella that Michelle had talked about. And I really think that that is going to be just a great model for us to get more of the capabilities brought together, but really to meet our app owner and our customers' need to understand how do I get after identity in the Don and be able to answer that question. So we're really excited. We were super excited to be a part of the initial launch, and we're continuing to work towards that operating model. Sorry for forgetting.
No worries. All right, so Don CIO and PEO Digital embarked on this journey to modernize and centralize identity access management back in 2019. An OTA was awarded. We selected 4 products that are what make up Naval Identity Services today. And 6 years later, and a fully staffed team, a centralized, kind of steady budget, and thousands of customers later, one of the questions that we keep getting from our customers is, what can I start doing today to prepare for integration? So I'm going to call on TL again. I promise the other panelists are going to talk. But can we talk about what customers or information owners can start doing today to prepare?
Yep. And pass the messaging on, please. Okay, so as I've talked about, we are deploying Portal 2.0 because what we have out there today, cloud.navy.mil or digital.navy.mil, we have a portal today. Get the systems registered. They're gonna go into a queue if it's not audit relevant, but if you get your system registered, we review those registrations as they come in. If we have additional questions, we're gonna reach out. As soon as we have capacity available and we can start pulling in the non-audit relevant apps, non-audit relevant apps, we're gonna be reaching out, in the order that we have to try to get that work done and get you integrated as quickly as possible. We are keeping metrics as far as how long it takes us to integrate apps, and the non-audit relevant apps are going a lot faster. So we know when we have capacity available, we can pull those apps in quickly. So if you could get your system registered. If you have an integration team that you're working with that doesn't know what NIST is providing, or has questions on different NIST aspects, instead of reaching out to POCs, ideally go to the customer portal. There's knowledge information. We admittedly have thrown up as much knowledge as we could onto this portal. Please provide feedback on that knowledge base that we've provided. We want to be able to provide as much information as we can. We have technical integration packages that include our standard configurations, our workflows. We are trying to stick to that standard as much as possible. That's how we integrate faster. If we start customizing, it's not going to go well. So please look at the material that's available. It's out there. Provide feedback if you could. That would just help us continue to improve it. We are also going to be holding, is it weekly or bi-weekly customer engagement sessions where you can have your teams dial in, ask questions. We'll have engineers there. We will have our business relationship managers there to talk about the process. We're trying to get everybody the information that they need, so when you get called up to integrate, you're ready to go, your team's ready to go, and we're farther down the path than we have been in the past. So please go to the portal. And then in the portal, but we've really taken the time and continue to update our standard configs and workflows. So that's what we want to pull everybody into. That really is the foundation of what we're trying to work towards, is a standard across the DON. We get a lot of questions. I already have a solution. Why do I need to do this? It's all in there. But there's a reason for everything that's being done. So the information's out there. Encourage everybody to go there and do it, or to review it. And then once Portal 2.0 is out, we are going to be reaching out to groupings of applications and asking them, please get into the portal, get your information registered, and then if you can self-service, go through and do that, just so we can maximize the use of our resources. So that's the best thing to do. We do have a Teams channel, a NIST customer Teams channel that you can access and ask questions on, and see information there as well. And we also have an ops mailbox. So if you have questions, you can reach out, NIST_ops, or I'll figure it out and let you guys know. But it's there. You just gotta look it up. But you guys can send us a message and we can answer. So we're trying to answer as many questions we can in a larger setting just to maximize our resources. But if it's something very specific, please don't hesitate to reach out and we're gonna get you that information. That's the best way to kind of get your team started.
Great, thank you. So we all know that Zero Trust is a key enabler of the secure pillar, and we definitely can't talk about Zero Trust without talking about identity and access management. So Dave, can you talk to us about the work that you're doing in collaboration with the NIST team to ensure that the DON is achieving a Zero Trust level architecture?
Yeah, so for me, the most important thing is for the service providers to understand what the capabilities that the Naval Identity Service folks have. Understand the federation of that identity from that centralized environment, understanding how that meta exchange does happen and how they become fully integrated, ready to accept authentication tokens from Naval Identity Service. So if you're on the service provider side, it's very important for you to have your requirements ready for what you need to see in the authentication token that's going to be coming across. So we're going to be relying on Naval Identity Service to provide an authentication token that we can act upon to make an authorization decision, an access decision in the environment. So in Zero Trust, there's going to be a lot more going on as far as allowing a person to get into the system and access resources, comply to connect. We're going to evaluate that machine to make sure that it's eligible just as much as the user. And even when the user is authorized into the environment based on their attributes and also the entitlements or the administrative intent that was given to them by their electronic SAR-N, we're still going to be looking at that person's behavior. So in the NIST 800-207, there's a trust algorithm known as the contextual-based trust algorithm, and we're going to make an attempt to look for a subverted account. So even though you may have access into the environment, both you and those resources in the environment are being scrutinized continuously to see whether or not the internal resources are a threat or we have an external threat that has presented an authentication token, looks genuine, but it may be counterfeit or stolen, and we need to be able to detect that and revoke access if necessary. So there's going to be a lot of relationships going on with this. So you can think about 1,500 different programs across the Department of Navy that are going to be integrated with a central environment. And there's some great services and benefits to doing that. One of the requirements that they have is separation of duty requirements, where we can analyze the person and then also look at their entitlements to make sure they don't have too much access. So we can get after that right away. I don't want to steal your thunder on that one, but that's definitely a native Naval Identity Service function that's going to be critical when we're making that authorization decision in a zero trust environment.
Yeah, great. And Kurt, would you want to talk a little bit about the key, maybe top 5 or so initiatives or activities that we're mapping to right now for Zero Trust?
So I don't have the activities in front of me, but I do have a collection of the activities, which one of our products and capabilities satisfies those Zero Trust activities. Admittedly, most of these are in the user pillar, and that's where we do most of our work. Now, that doesn't mean that NIS doesn't have, and when I say pillar, I'm not talking about the 3 pillars that we were mentioned
Zero
earlier.
Trust pillars.
We're talking about the Zero Trust pillars from DoD. There are 7, and we operate mainly in Pillar 1. It doesn't mean we don't have a hand in satisfying or assisting with some of the other pillars. We do, especially like over in the data pillar and a little bit in the maybe Internet of Things and but most of our stuff takes place in the activities that are in the user pillar. I have a document, and to Ms. Rathbun's point, it's not very sexy. It's an Excel spreadsheet that lists each of those the products, how you can essentially. Are we still calling it inheriting, even though it's not?
Yeah, it's inherited.
Okay. We used to have a tool for zero trust activities and how the applications were inheriting from, let's say, enterprise services like NIS. That's since been moved to DoD, but I explain how each of our activities can be inherited by the application and what they have to do in order to do that. So email me. I will make it prettier, and I will put it up on the
Sexier.
Yeah, make it sexier on our fact page.
Use some word art.
Word art, yes.
So yesterday we heard Ms. Beavers talking about Identity Federation and some of the work they're doing with Canadians to look at how they establish trust and sharing identities. So Federation is a big focus for us right now, and we're working very closely with DoD. I'm going to ask Kurt to give us a little bit about the Federation work, specifically the Federation Hub, and what are we doing to prepare to federate information?
Yeah, so the concept of the Federation Hub is, this is something that DoD is doing, or just is doing for DoD. it's considered a federation of federations, and Okta is working on that right now. The idea is once you federate with the hub, you are federated with everybody else who is also federated with the hub without having to do it individually for each of the individual members of that federation. So we're starting one with just the DoD. So we federate with the hub, then we are now federated with Air Force, Army, DLA, DHA, all of the agencies that go along with that. So that's the first type of federation, and that is considered authentication federation. What they are doing right now, and as Ms. Beavers mentioned, is that they are starting another type of federation hub that would federate with the other federation hub, and this one would be our mission partners, so that we can also authenticate and make sure that when somebody tries to access one of our systems that is using this type of federation hub, we can go back to their home IDP and ensure that this person is active and has a set number of attributes that will then be passed back to us to use for authorization decisions. We're working on that with Canada right now, and I think we'll talk more about that this summer during our ICAM time. Federation itself basically means being able to reuse or use somebody else's work. So there's another type of federation that we are also working on, and this is data federation. And what we're doing with that is we're taking the information that we have in our global directory right now, we call the master user record, and we are federating information back up to DoD. So DoD has most of our information already, but there's some Navy-specific things that they don't have. Like, for instance, the last time you took the cybersecurity workforce challenge. That's another piece of data that we are federating back up to DoD so that the rest of the DoD and service components can see that information and use that to make decisions for Navy personnel getting access to systems outside of the Navy.
Great. Another important principle that was discussed yesterday was the importance of collaborating and ensuring that we don't create stovepipes. So now I would like Christina to share how her team, the Neptune team, has been collaborating with the NIST team in ensuring that we achieve efficiencies and that we are using the capabilities that we already have available to us.
So first and foremost, we talk to each other, so that helps a lot. But primarily, when I'm working with mission owners through the Neptune portal, we get them pulling in. They come to us with questions about NIST. We always make the connection, make sure that they have the information that they need to go after integrating with NIST or getting into that queue. The other thing that we're focusing on is making sure that we have stable infrastructure for not just NIST, but for all enterprise services to be able to sustain operations in a reliable manner. That's probably the biggest collaboration point that we have right now. We're working on both focusing on an infrastructure as code strategy and making sure that we can accredit systems in a streamlined manner, but also that they're sustainable, reliable, and serve the requirements of enterprise services. And then the other thing is the diversity of services available. So we're working on trying to bring in as much diversity within the CSP environment as we can to help both with competition, but also additional services that may be useful, not just to enterprise services, but mission owners across the Dawn.
You should have something.
Yeah. The only thing I would add there is Christina and the Neptune office team has really reached out to get ahead of it. So right now, the integrations that we're doing with different cloud service managers are with the environments that have already been established. But as additional CSPs are brought in, they are making it a point to put us ahead of that. So it's not something that's going to be done after the fact, but working in conjunction with the Neptune office to bring that forward. So with additional CSPs that are brought in, whatever they may be, they'll already be connected with NIS, and then the app owners would actually be able to benefit from that right from the beginning.
Right, so we're building in the integration on the front end instead of having to refactor later.
Yep. Great, thank you. So I mentioned in the beginning that we have a stack of 4 products that we've selected to provide the services known as Naval Identity Services. I know in this talk we didn't go into details as to what those products are and what they do. We've done that in the past, and we're more than happy to share information on those. However, today we have Frank, who's our SailPoint engineer, and we really just wanted to kind of wrap a bow on the conversation that we just had and have Frank tell us how the services within SailPoint are enabling everything that we just talked about. So Frank, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor and a privilege to be sitting up here, especially as a Navy veteran. This has been a long journey, and for me, it's kind of coming full circle. But you know, congratulations to the Navy team. As the federal CTO at SailPoint, I work with the other uniformed services. I work with your global mission partners. And I can tell you, this is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm Navy, right, blue and gold, but no, in all seriousness, you know, this program, I've watched it from Jane Rathbun's, you know, the light bulb going off in her head to where we're sitting today. And, you know, congratulations, everyone here deserves a big round of applause. This is not an easy task. We've seen starts, we've seen stops, we've seen challenges all over. I've personally been doing identity for 30 years, going back to the DoD PKI. Yeah, I'm that old. And really, you know, seeing the success in Navy just really is underpinned by the involvement that we hear from across all of the things we talked about today. And in these times where we're being challenged, whether it's by a new DoD instruction, 85-2004, I mean, hey, that should have been right up your alley. If you guys haven't read that yet, you knocked it out of the park. But no, there's so many organizations that aren't in alignment or even ready to align with some of the new instructions and even zero trust, right? What does zero trust really mean? You know, 6 years ago, we sat on panels and it was vaporware. And now we have deadlines looming over our heads, and we've defined that. At SailPoint, we're very proud to be part of the NIST 207 exercise of the Zero Trust Implementation Cooperative Research Agreement. And we've encountered through partnerships with the Navy and Department of Defense and federal civilian agencies, and like I said, your mission partners in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, in the UK, how we're actually building these things and using them. And I heard a lot of key things today about automation, right? Whether we are talking about onboarding your application or system, whether we are automating, sorry about that, whether we are automating the data that we're bringing into the platform, to Dave's point about zero trust, you know, when something changes, our access should change, right? And that is probably the most key thing that doesn't happen. We've all been ingrained for over the past 20 years that, you know, we get an entitlement and we live with that entitlement forever. And that really is the foundation of those workflows that you're hearing about. That's what these folks have built. That is to change that access when something about you changes, whether it's that cyber awareness training or some other, what I call identity is an indicator of compromise. If my access is continuously changing, guess what? There's probably something behind the scenes that's changing that. Where did that happen? And that's some of the risk we get when we start looking at these federation portals and hubs and things like that. We need to trust the data that's going into those hubs. We need to trust that it's being governed before it's being used as the new keys to the kingdom. And that's the foundation that Navy has built, that across the Department of Defense is being built. We just need to make sure those controls are being put in the right place. Where SailPoint is in all this, you know, we're happy to work with all of the mission partners and business partners of Navy across, like I said, the U.S. and many, you know, DISA, the IGA initiative that's been going on there for a few years. You know, it's fantastic, and thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And I do want to mention that our stack is in alignment with the other services and what DoD has selected. So we are working very closely and in very much alignment with DoD and the other services.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we started off with when all this was framed up was what's best of breed, right? At that time, that was best of breed. And you guys have grown that best of breed. And, you know, Army procured similar stack. Air Force, similar stack. The core component, lowest common denominator, I'll just knock on the table. I won't say it out loud. I'm not a sales guy, he is. But that is, you know, like I said, when I'm working, and I just had a call yesterday with Canada, they're looking at the same thing. I have a, you know, call, I spend a lot of time with New Zealand Defense and Australia Defense. They're already using the platform. They've been doing it for a while. And we're seeing this as the lowest common denominator, and it just goes to signify how important what these folks have done with that governance layer is. We hear things that, you know, especially in that instruction 85-2004 about implicit trust and dynamic trust and, you know, how the trust models are changing and access models are changing. We still all have to answer auditors. We have to answer forensics, behavior analytics. So all of these things just build the foundation for really your posture going into the next decade.
Great, thank you. So we're only talking about a very small piece of the very big pie. We could spend a lot more time talking about this. We know our time is limited, but I do want everybody to appreciate just the complexities around doing identity and access management, especially in an organization like the Department of the Navy, where we have, 2,000 plus systems or applications that we need to go after. These are legacy applications operating in, you know, maybe sometimes unsupported environments due to mission requirements. So there's a lot of work and complicated work that is going on behind the scenes. So I just want to appreciate our panel for coming out and talking, and to the NIST team for really bringing us from a very small pilot to something that is being scaled to the entire naval enterprise. So with that, I want to open the mic for questions. I think this is where, you know, we get the most value is answering your questions. So hopefully.
Can I add something to your last comment real quick first?
Sure.
So as you mentioned, we have more than 2,000 systems that we need to get modernized and into not just identity service, but also into the cloud. And I just wanted to do a quick plug. If you're an application or a mission owner that needs to get to the cloud, I'm your person. Yeah, come by the Neptune table or go to the Neptune portal, submit an engagement, and we'll work with you and find where your home in the cloud needs to be.
Great, thank you, Christine. I think that's the power of the partnerships that we've established here is like, we'll point people to you, you point people to us.
Yeah.
And we make sure that everybody is getting modernized, so. Do we have questions on Teams? Okay.
Just go grab it.
With this capability support requirements for a joint command who needs both flank speed, Navy flank speed, and joint cloud. If yes, has testing started or about to start?
Kurt.
Yeah, I guess that's directed at me. Okay, so when you say, so first off, thank you for the question. NIS today is not the front door to flank speed. So what I think they mean is access to a Navy person, which doesn't, like, when you say flank speed, you were very specifically talking about Microsoft's specific technologies and Office 365 that is located in the Azure cloud. So can this authenticate Navy users? Yes. What you put behind it or what it's authenticating to, I'm not going to say it doesn't really matter, but it could be federated with a joint program. Could you read that back to me one more time about the joint?
Will this capability support requirements for a joint command who needs access to both Navy flank speed and joint cloud?
Okay, what we're talking about is two different tenants. A joint tenant and a Navy tenant. This doesn't solve licensing, right. You still have to pay for the Navy people in both tenants, which that's somebody else's conversation. It's not mine. I'm an engineer. I don't really talk money. But what it will not do, as we've discovered, it will not solve the problem that you have today, which is I exist in this tenant, but I'm trying to get access to something that's in this other tenant, and there is an access issue there. That is not something that an ICAM solution can do on its own. That is something that has to be engineered by the people who supply that technology. It's not there yet, but I'm confident that it will be and will probably be involved in the solution when that comes.
Can I take that a step deeper? So Pat Miller, I work for Naval Reactors, and we have an unclassified environment, DOE environment called Prime. So we are a dual-headed agency. We operate both PrimeNet and FlankSpeed, and we have established cross-tenant capabilities. So I have users that work in my organization that from a single device, our PrimeNet device, we can access both FlankSpeed and PrimeNet. I guess what I'm looking for is, with the non-ICAM solution, is there a plan, and if yes, when will I be able to access both environments with a single identity? Whether that identity is my DOE PIV or my DOD CAC, don't really care which one. I do have a preference, but I don't know. So the question is out there, and I think that's what this user may have been referring
Probably
to.
similar.
Actually, to Kurt's point, it doesn't have anything to do with ICAM. It has to do with the Azure tenants and how they choose to manage accounts. So when we enable those B2B integrations between different M365 tenants, that creates different authorization paths. So this can enable that, but it's fundamentally an engineering decision on the back end of the two tenants.
Right.
Is it though? Because the engineering, from our perspective, the engineering part is done, right? We have the capabilities. But right now, I have to use a second CAC or a second card reader, and I have to use both my DOD CAC and my DOE CAC to be able to access those two environments.
So
doesn't
if I,
solve that, a confederation of identities, solve that
Not
problem?
an identity federation issue, it's a
And
tenant
licensing issue.
configuration and an account licensing issue.
if I may add to that as well. So when we talk about flank speed, we're talking about two different things. One is the infrastructure, and the other is the SaaS. So the infrastructure and the SaaS. So the SaaS is the Microsoft 365 solution. If you have different configurations and different authentication rules across the two tenants, you can't just decide that they both work the same. You have to either pick one for both and agree on how that's going to work together from a configuration perspective. And NIST doesn't solve that problem alone.
Right.
It has to be a conversation between the management groups of the tenants, figure out what they want to agree to as far as the rules behind the scenes, and then NIST can support whatever the decision is.
Right. So as an example, NIS, through the authentication or federation today, could authenticate you, which means you're valid, your CAC works, and you belong to these organizations. It still can't let you share a file in Teams. Teams doesn't allow it. Because we can't make those permissions in the two tenants work that way. That's why whenever we try to share something with the Marine Corps in Teams, it doesn't work. I can't access that.
All right.
And I wish I could solve that, but that is the technology of the tenants today is not allowing that.
The
the configurations. And those are two organizations, the Marine Corps tenant and the flank speed tenant. They have to have a conversation and fix
And
that.
agree.
And that is specific to Azure, the Azure services.
And it's not just a configuration, it's also Microsoft's product roadmap for B2B and multi-tenant organizations that's not fully delivered. So I would say we should have a call and conversation, Pat, about what's within the realm of possible today
And what's on the roadmap.
is not.
Right. So to do what you're asking, every tenant would have to have a configuration conversation with every other tenant individually
Which
to
is
get that
where-
worked out.
Which is where having a centralized architecture that's always the same comes really in handy.
Right. I feel your pain. We have the same problems just in our own teams.
Well, technology, I hear everything you guys are saying, but the technology, I mean, I'm operating on a single device. I have access to data and services in both environments from that single device. What doesn't happen right now is there is the last hurdle that we're trying to overcome is that single identity so that when I'm in the one environment, it recognizes the other tenant or the other environment and allows that information to be shared. And
Right. The technology certainly exists. What we're talking about is the people part of it.
yeah, I got you.
Yep.
No, it has to do with the specific B2B and MTO features that have not been delivered and enabled.
Okay. All right, I would ask that we have that conversation. 'Cause I think we've sent our people down a path, after having discussions with DISA, we've sent our people down, the DOE folks, down a path of developing a solution. And my understanding was that it is feasible and that this is literally, I'll call it an agreement and discussion between DOD, ICAM, and DOE, ICAM.
We'll follow.
Okay, all right, thanks, appreciate it.
Of course.
Any other questions, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
With capabilities becoming more online dependent, real-world events such as CrowdStrike, the Southwest Airlines, et cetera, have occurred that knocked online capabilities offline. What is your plan B should this online capability become disabled?
Before you answer, I just want to say macro segmentation. Go ahead.
Care to explain?
Sure. So one of the things that we're working on is making sure that there are multiple ways of accessing things and multiple ways of connecting to things. So we had a transport summit not too long ago. Cables get cut all the time. Satellites need to be defended by Salesforce, or not Salesforce, Space Force. Sorry, I got the S and the force. My bad. So there are wireless technologies, there are satellite technologies, there are cable technologies, and we have to be able to switch between all three in order to sustain operations. Beyond that, within infrastructure on a cloud basis, we are making sure that we're doing not just microsegmentation and authentication and authorization through NIST, but also macro segmentation so that each individual application that has the expertise and needs to operate independently can do so while still having the oversight of the organizations that need to turn stuff off if there's a data breach, or turn something off if there's a problem, or if there's an adversary in the network.
Yeah, so to add on to that, specific to NIS, we are designed for high availability in our AWS cloud. Understand that network services, enterprise services do depend on the network. I can't necessarily promise that it will never go down, but we will do our best to the highest we can to make sure that our services are as rock solid as possible. However, I will point out something, and I understand that there's a fear that if NIS goes down, nobody gets access to anything. Okay. According to Zero Trust, that's by design. If your ICAM does not work, you're not supposed to get access to anything because you can't verify with a centralized identity source that those people are supposed to have access right now. So that is the way Zero Trust works. and the way it is to be designed. So, you know, we design our service to be up 5 nines is our goal.
Do you mind,
The mic.
do you mind just going on the microphone?
Just so the people on Teams
People
can
are
hear you.
online, yeah. Okay, thank you.
So, good afternoon. My name is Amik Sodi. I'm the Command Property Officer for NAVWAR. And so, my counterparts and I, we will be going to DC next week to pitch the comptroller on a next generation stack of software that we'd like to buy. If we get funded, we'd like to be good partners with you all and make sure that we're getting ahead of the curve on any requirements that would be needed to be met, right, and get our systems registered and all of that. And so as part of that, the registration that you guys talked about, is that only when a software is put into a production environment? Or is it, before then? And also when you guys talked about integrations into NIST, a lot of these low-code, no-code capabilities, right, half the development staff are working on integrations, right? And so if there's any work that we could do from a project management standpoint with your team if we're able to fund this kind of thing, we'd want to do that as well.
I want to say thank you so much. These are all, we've heard these questions, and we do actually have a document out on the portal that provides if you're still in development and don't yet have an ATO, this is what you can do to prepare to integrate with NIST as soon as you get that ATO. Here are the steps you do early, and then this is what we need to work together on, and then once you have your ATO, we can connect. So we do have those documents out on the portal. You can register your system now, and you can fill out as much of the information as you can. And then once the team reaches back out to you, we can start those conversations. We want to learn what your timelines are, because that's an important piece that we're in alignment on. And then we'll walk through the rest of the stuff in the design that we can be working with you guys towards.
Copy. Thank you.
Thank you for asking early.
I don't think we have any more questions.
Oh, man. It's always bad when the boss goes to the mic.
At the program review in April of 2023. No. So kind of for the general awareness and then a question for the future. So we talked about the DDIL timeline of working with Kane's FY26. Just, I hope people are tracking the Unified Endpoints memo and PO Digital and C4I and MLB trying to work together to get to more cohesive architectures to enable workloads to be accessed from wherever they need to be accessed from. And so that may end up pulling some of those things left, but more generally, I just want people to be aware of that. The question for the future is talked about the 2 federation hubs, and we've had some discussions lately about how can we better collaborate with industry. And we had the use case come up of, well, technically, we could certainly identify identity peering potentially with those B2B settings and MTO. But, then what would be the auditable controls to make sure that someone claiming to have rights to a certain government organizational group was actually correct? So I was just curious if we had planned to bring industry into either of those federation hubs at the DoD level that you've heard about, or potentially a third hub.
So, first off, there aren't just 2 hubs. There are as many hubs as those, as the government wants to stand up, or even industry. Because the idea was that if an industry partner does have an ICAM, they could join a hub that is federated and be able to authenticate. Now, one thing that's kind of unclear is, and once we get to the implementation part, the Army is supposed to be the first ones to join the Federation Hub pretty soon, is how the authorizations are going to work. Because nobody wants somebody to have access to their system without going through the proper channels and actually having permission from, like, nobody's going to get access to Navy ERP from the Department of Energy unless they go through the steps, right? So we're going to see how that works out. So authorization is still going to be kept by the application owners, or the people like the Navy. They make sure who has access. The federation part of that, the authentication, is just to make sure they are active right now at the time of access. Because the people in the other ICAMs know if somebody got, fired within the last hour, you would already know that because of the federation relationship there. So, yeah, we can definitely, there is talk about doing that with commercial people as well. But doesn't, absolve them of having to do an access request. So, make that important.
We got the thumbs up from the boss, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. We have our email addresses up there. You can find us on, what is it, Navy, NIST@navy.mil? Is that the easiest?
Cloud.navy.mil/NIST.
/NIST. But come to us if you have questions, and thank you to our panel.
There was one other thing before. You said a word, and can you tell them, I blushed earlier, and once I blush, I get a little more comfortable. You did mention something that I think is very important, audit. And I just want to say this. Audit is more stringent than zero trust. That's why it's taking us a little bit longer with our audit systems, because they have more rules. As TL pointed out, non-audit systems go a lot faster because they don't have all of these rules. And they are very stringent. But we've passed audit. We are audit compliant. We can help you pass your audit if you're an audit system. So I did want to make sure that I did mention audit, because you did mention that before. So, Michelle, back over to you.
All right, I think now, any safe rounds?
Well,
All right, thank you all so much.